Hi, everybody. I'm Tamara's owner.
And I'm John Davis.
Welcome to Spirit Cafe.
Come in, sit down, and
grab a cup of love.
A Spirituality Without the Guilt podcast. Hey, guys, it's me, John Davis, and I'm here with Spirit Cafe. It's a lovely day outside. I think it might actually break 30 today. A lot of snow on the ground. It's pretty interesting here in Akron, Ohio. I'm very excited today. We have a great guest coming in for us to talk to today. But before I bring a guest in, of course, I have to bring in my compatriot of compassion, the lovely and powerful Miss Tamara owner. Good morning, Tamara. How are you?
Good morning, John Davis. Are you doing all right? Are you?
I feel phenomenal. Let me tell you why I feel phenomenal. You ready for this?
Yes.
For the past week, I have been prepping for a 40-day water fast, and today is day one. And so I got up this morning. I feel so light. I feel so great. I feel I'm not hungry at all. I just feel energetic. I have all my joint pain goes away when I do this work, and so it's like, today's a good day for me. And I'm growing the beard in on the side here, and I'm wearing my old glasses, which makes me look like a grandpa. So, so I'm enjoying the day. It's good. How about you?
Yeah, good so far. So far, so good. I have been indoors for most of it, and actually, the walk with the dog this morning was quite lovely. So,
oh well, that's good. That's good. Well, we have a great guest today. She's a author and a speaker and a spiritual teacher, and she takes people from trauma to peace. I forget the actual thing on her page. I had it up and I accidentally turned it off. So
we're never very good at introducing people.
No.
Themselves anyway. They always do it better.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? So let's go ahead and bring in Ann. Ann Hince, good morning to you. How are you today?
Good morning to you too. I'm doing great. Thanks. Morning's just starting here in California.
California.
Yeah, I like California, but it's warm there, isn't it?
It's nice, beautiful blue sky. Yeah.
Yeah. Just rub that in, why don't you?
We'll have blue skies eventually too, and warm weather. It's just going to take us more time.
Oh, it's blue sky outside. It's just cold.
It's gray in Michigan.
Oh, nice. So, Ann, you have a very, very interesting story. Why don't you go ahead and give us a little bit of the story and give us a little bit of background on you?
Sure. I apologize. I have some dogs at home.
Oh, I thought this was going to be one of those episodes where we're actually speaking in tongues or something.
That would be a new development on Spirit.
We haven't done that episode. We should do that episode.
Okay, I had a lot of trauma growing up, like a lot of us. I was adopted. Both my parents were alcoholics. One of the biggest was being sent to a boys' boarding school. I was the first girl boarder at a boys' boarding school at the age of 9. And then at the age of 19, I woke up one morning and found my mother dead in the bathroom, which was a big trauma. And, I didn't know what to do with it. I suppressed it because that was the way we always did it. So I didn't know anything else. But it wasn't until I was in my late 30s and I had something happen with a couple of other mothers at school, like a business altercation. I hadn't done anything wrong, but they thought I had. And my mind would spin out of control and it would just replay the scenario over and over and over again. And I couldn't sleep for days. And that's when I realized that this was not normal and that other people wouldn't react this way. So at that point, I started to think more about my childhood. Maybe there was something that I hadn't dealt with. And it was around that time that I went to a doctor's appointment. I was a stay-at-home mother with 2 young boys. And my doctor recognized that I was more stressed than I should have been in that situation. And he asked me what my stress level was on a 0 through 10, and it was an 8. And then he asked me why. And I knew straight away it was from fighting my mother, which is 2 decades earlier at this point. because the tears were still so close to the surface when I thought about it. So he used this technique with me, kind of weird. It's called emotional freedom technique, or EFT. And it's also called tapping, because we're tapping on parts of our body as we're talking through something. And he worked with me for about 15 minutes. And I walked away from that appointment being able to tell the story in my mind without the tears there. And it felt like such a huge shift for me.
Wow.
So, yeah. So I wanted to check it out because I have an engineering background. I was a software engineer. I like to know things work, and I didn't want it to be just like a fluke, a one-time thing. So around that time frame, we had a 17-year-old cat that needed a daily saline shot. And the first time I gave him the shot, my hand was shaking so much. I was so afraid of doing it. I knew I wasn't going to be able to do it on a daily basis. So I thought, well, this is a great test case for me. So I tapped about my fear of hurting my cat. I tapped about my history of injections and the fact that my hand was shaking and I was so afraid. And the next day, the needle just slid right in and my hand was totally peaceful. So I knew at that point that this was a deceptively powerful technique, and I started using it every day.
That's amazing. And I know Tamara will have a lot to say, because Tamara, you use the same technique, don't you?
I do. I've been using emotional freedom technique for about 10 years now, and it is deceptively powerful, as you say, and absolutely. You just don't realize how much our emotions are connected and stored in our bodies, and EFT is such a powerful way to release it. And I listened to a few of your videos this morning as I was getting ready, Anne, and you said there are literally thousands of videos. And I was like, yes, there are thousands of videos of EFT, including one from me where I introduce it to my viewers. Yeah.
Nice. So what I did is I just started working with it during the day. And you probably did this too, where I would notice when I was becoming emotional about something and I would tap about it and I would feel myself relax. And I just recognized I wanted more. I really wanted more because I'm really trying to quiet my mind because I was so negative and so judgmental and I hated being that way. So I then wrote down all the emotional memories I could think of from childhood. And there was quite a good list. And I worked through them one each night. So I would tap for about an hour to an hour and a half each night. And I found my mind becoming quiet and peaceful. And it was so nice. And at one point I opened my kitchen door and I thought, it feels like I'm living in a different reality because my mind was totally different. It was quiet. And I recognized at that point that the words that I had been using in my mind, those that I criticized myself with and judged other people, had been my dad's words. And I had just been programmed with them in childhood. And I just replayed them over and over again. But I couldn't see that until they were gone. And then I could look back and see that they were his words.
I totally get that. My father was a drinker and also an abuser as well. And I was the one in our family that he didn't like. And so I totally understand that point of view. And I caught myself years ago realizing that I was living his expectations of me. He basically was saying, this is who you are, this is how you are, this is what you are. And I was believing every word and acting, in alignment with it. And when I stopped acting in alignment with what he was telling me I stopped living his life and started living mine. And suddenly what happened was everything changed so dramatically in my life. I ended up, so I've achieved so many amazing things in my life. I just can't go on to tell you, but you're absolutely right. You've got to break free of the external dialogue from people who really were going, just exerting power over you in that time. So I think it's great.
And I did the same thing. I did what I thought would make my dad happy. So becoming an engineer, he was an engineer, but in reality, I should have gone to art school. So that's another story. But what I realized with EFT, what it's doing, it's opening up the subconscious mind. And I realized that there is this spectrum of awareness. So when I started this work, I wasn't aware of how I felt about anything because I'd suppressed everything for so long. And so I started to become aware of my emotions, but then underneath the emotions are physical sensations. So I started to become aware of the physical sensations, which was like a deeper level of awareness. So at this point, you can still tap on, and you know this, Tamara, you can tap on feeling. So like feeling like frustration, right? We might feel that. I feel it as tension in my stomach or my solar plexus. So I could still tap about this frustration in my solar plexus, because we're just using the words to focus on the place in our body.
Right.
But I recognized at that point that I didn't need to tap so much. I realized I could actually focus on the physical sensations themselves, because I had this friend that would say over and over again, it's not about, you don't have to meditate, which was good because I didn't want to do that. It's all about feeling your feelings, but I didn't know what they were to begin with, but EFT opened that up to me. So I became aware of the sensations. So then what does he mean by feeling your feelings? Like, what does that actually mean? How can you do that? Because it's this mental concept. You can't just think it, you've actually got to feel it. So I would stand at the kitchen sink doing my dishes and recognize when I thought an emotional thought. I would catch that thought, which is the first step, and then notice where those physical sensations were in my body, and I would try and feel them. And they would want to squirm away, right? That tension would want to squirm away. So I recognized I actually had to hold myself like a statue. I had to even stop breathing right where I was so that I could keep that tension in my awareness. And then it would dissipate. And then I would do it over and over again with the same thought until the tension had just dissipated, until the thought had been freed up in my body. So then a thought like, and I use this as an example of how far you can go, but I don't recommend this to begin with. I got to the place where I could say to myself, I hate myself, because I did. And I did it enough times that then there was no emotion behind it. And there were just words. So I hate myself. It's easy for me to say I hate myself. Doesn't mean anything anymore. Right. But for a long time it would bring up these emotions and these feelings.
And I think that's one of the universal truths that's out there. I mean, Shakespeare himself said, words without thoughts never to heaven go. And so I believe that if you're not putting the thought or belief behind it, it's non-creative. And so you're breaking that cycle. The other thing you said that I find really fascinating, because it's one of my truest spiritual beliefs, is that the connection to source is in the feeling body, not the thinking head. Because I think that this is the masculine, this is the feminine, and this energy is where we wandered in the wilderness. It's actually from a biblical standpoint, it's what the story of the Garden of Eden is about. It's they ate from the tree of knowledge, and then they were cast out. And so they got into their head and they started thinking things too much, and they started getting into their head too much. And because of that, they got cast out of the feeling of God and the feeling sensations. And I think what you've done is come at it from a very scientific approach and found your way back to connecting the source.
Yeah, that's interesting. We'll talk about that if we get time a little later too, because I'd love to. But yes, what I realized is what I'm doing is I'm out of my thinking mind and I'm in my feeling mind. If those are two separate parts of mind, I used to say I'm out of my mind, but it doesn't sound so good. So I just in my feeling mind. But yes, because I'm not thinking, I'm feeling.
Right.
And yeah, it is different. Yeah. So I would do that more and more and recognize, each step along the way, I'm becoming more peaceful, which was what I wanted. So at this point, I recognized I didn't need to do tapping. So I didn't tap in the evenings. Instead of tapping, I'd lay on the sofa and I would bring something to mind. And at this point, I'd worked through a lot of my childhood stuff. So I did more collective things like 9/11 or the Loma Prieta earthquake. I'd bring the thought, the memory to mind and feel those physical sensations and let them go and do it again and again and again with the same thought until it was free. And at some point during this process, I recognized that I could keep my awareness inside my body after the tension had dissipated. So the way I kind of try and explain this, it's not easy to explain, is, imagine you've got a toothache or a stomach ache you can feel exactly where that's coming from on the inside. But once it's gone, once the ache is gone, you can't pinpoint it anymore. But I could keep my awareness on the inside still at that point. So I started using that because I figured it's just the next step along the path. And I could then put my awareness on physical tension on the inside. And I would do the same thing, hold my awareness on it, just accept it, and it would dissipate. And then I'd do it again and again and again, layer by layer by layer. And at some point, I could actually put my awareness inside my head, my face, and I would keep doing the same thing. And as I released more tension on the inside, I actually started to hear and feel something release. It sounded like old fabric ripping. And I realized that it's the connective tissue releasing its bonds inside. So this was kind of scary to begin with. Didn't know what I was doing, but I kept doing it because I'm just releasing tension. It's got to be good. And so, eventually I could actually feel the shift in my bones. I could feel them relax. So I knew something was changing, which is why it was so great to have some x-rays taken last year, just orthodontic x-rays, and compare that from 2013 and see that my whole skull structure has relaxed more into alignment. Wow. My jaw has centered, my neck has straightened, my eye sockets have aligned, and I've grown half an inch as a 55-year-old, which is pretty cool, I think.
Wow, that is amazing.
Thank you. So that's my story. That's where I am today.
Wow. That's an amazing story. Incredible story.
I love this process of, I imagined as you were talking first, when you first began EFT, like it really is kind of clearing out the clutter out of our cupboards, right? That we haven't looked at for a long time. And piece by piece, with each traumatic event in your life, you took it out, looked at it, and decided whether it was time to keep it or let it go. And that's the beauty of EFT. And like you, when I first started using EFT, I would tap for hours a day on whatever the thing was that was present for me. And then as time passed, I didn't need to use it anymore because like you, I had connected my emotion and my body. And I loved in one of your videos, you talked about feeling versus emotion, right? That we're disconnected from the feelings of our body, the sensations of our body. And when we use these tools like EFT, we reconnect and allow ourselves to feel and give those feelings and the emotions a voice so that they can go on their merry way.
Absolutely. That's what John was just saying about reconnecting with the physical sensations. Yeah, because we get programmed in childhood. We start disconnecting from it when parents and teachers and everyone start using the words, right? We'll say to a child, "Oh, you're angry." Mm-hmm. And then that child disconnects from those feelings that they're experiencing, which is really maybe it's tension in the jaw and in the stomach area, right? Then we forget about those feelings and we just start using the word. And
right.
This
and
is
in fact, sometimes that's so bad for us, because if a person is feeling some tenseness or butterflies in the stomach, they might just say, "Oh, I'm anxious," when in fact they might be excited. And so we're mislabeling sensation as well out of habit and out of what other people told us that meant.
Good point. Yeah. So this whole process, it's like as I said, it's an expansion of awareness at a deeper and deeper level, right? So it shows me that even when we're tapping on using EFT on words, right? We're just using the words of something that happened. It's still working at the physical level.
Yes.
Right. So now when I sense on the inside, I'm sensing, I can sense tension or no tension, and I can sense light and darkness, which is connected. But what I recognize is all we need to find is the tension. It is the darkness, and EFT works on the negative. That's the power of it. It's finding our true negative, because when we let it go, underneath is the positive. It just arises. Right. Yeah.
Brilliant. One of my favorite quotes of all time from the Star Wars movies. Yoda actually said, "Named must your fear be, before banish it you can." You have to name your fear. You have to put your finger on it before you can release it. And I think you have to go there. You have to, as Tamara would say, you have to go look at it. You got to go explore.
Yeah, it's all about awareness.
Right.
Yeah, you do. It's almost like it is. I really believe it is. It's actually cleaning out a wound on the inside, right? I do believe there's tension on the inside associated with these memories. And we're releasing that dis-ease inside the body by looking at it and looking at all the different aspects of it and clearing out all the dirt inside of it so that it can release that tension and then be gone.
Yep. One of my favorite quotes that I made up myself is, if you ignore it, you store it. And if you feel it, you heal it.
Beautiful.
Right. That's lovely. That's a lovely quote. I think it's perfect because of the fact that literally you have to explore, for instance, we talked about earlier, my relationship with my father. If I didn't explore number one, the results of that, both good and bad, I had to look at it and go, okay, it held me back from lots of things here. But as I got older and became able to reconcile that, it is one of the things that made me very independent and made me, go off and do whatever I wanted rather than living his life. That's why I've ended up doing all the things I've done, is because of the fact that it was such a hard life. And he was trying to mold me into something that I wasn't. And, so I rebelled in a way, and that was a great thing for me. But one of the things I had to do in that circumstance is I had to look at my father and say, well, he was a human too, and he was probably doing the best he could with what he knew. And I knew that his father was an alcoholic abuser. So I knew that it was in the family. And so by being able to look at the hurt and the cause and the person who brought that hurt and put my finger on it, I was able to release the attachment to what he was doing. And I never had to, you never have to like what they did, but you can release the attachment to what they did. We talked about this in another episode on forgiveness. You don't have to like what they did, but you don't have to hold on to it either. And now I look at it and I go, well, he was that way. And now it's made me this way. It made me a better father. My son knows I love him, and he hugs me every day, and I have a great relationship with my son because of the fact that I broke that cycle, and I never would have broken that cycle if I didn't put my finger on it first.
Right.
Nice. Yes. Yeah. You have to look at it, and those attachments I now know are the connective tissue, right? That they're tension held in the connective tissue. And you have to look at it directly. And when you do, once you let it go, that's when compassion and understanding arises, which sounds like it's what happened with you, John. Right? It arose once you had opened up the wound and let go of it. But until we do that, there's too much resistance, right? We're blaming the other person. We're thinking they caused everything that happened in our life. And so we can't get to that place of compassion and understanding until we look at it closely and let it go.
Right. And you have to look at it, especially when you've had somebody like a parent. You have to look at it from the perspective of they're not the person on the pedestal you saw them as a child. They are also human and equal. And once you bring them down off the pedestal, it's like, oh, okay, I get it now. I understand that, he wasn't perfect either, So I think I love what you're saying. I also love one of the things I saw on your website when I had it up, was the brainwave shots where how much more energized your brainwaves were than some other people. I thought that was fascinating, and I think it's mainly because of the fact that you've been able to release so much and not hold on to so much. That said, one of the pictures I saw on your site, which was really interesting, was you side by side with a Reiki master, and your brainwaves were more energetic. Do you think that the modality itself was limiting for the Reiki master?
Possibly. What I wanted, when you're using energy like that, in that moment, it's almost like when you're meditating, in that moment of meditation, your brain waves are different, but oftentimes when you come out of it, or when the Reiki master is no longer working with the energy, they're sometimes back to a normal for them state.
Right.
I
right.
wanted my base state to change so that I didn't have to get into a state. I wanted to be that state.
Right.
So that's what I recognized that EFT was doing, that it's changing the physical on the inside. I look at it through the law of attraction. I started that helped me understand, right, that I am emitting a signal every second of every day and attracting back into my future based on the signal. So what I've got now around me is a result of the signal I've had in the past. So if I want to change my future, I want to change where I am right now, this signal that I'm emitting right now. And you can do that by meditation or something where you're actually putting yourself more into peace, or with Reiki where you're working with that energy. But I wanted to change me. So I recognized that EFT was doing that it's, and now that I know at a much deeper level it's changing that connected tissues, letting go of that tension on the inside, so that I am now this calmer person all the time. It's not just when I'm meditating or doing something else, right? It's all the time.
Lovely, lovely, lovely. I know, and it's interesting because, when you hopped on today, the first thing I said was, wow, what a great smile, because you could see it in your person. You could see that feeling. It's like when I met Tamara, same thing. You could see it in her person. And I think that inner glow, that shine is when you've cleared a bunch of stuff away and you've come back to your pure authentic self without the anchors of anxiety from past experience. And we all drop into habit. One of the quotes that I often talk about is the Buddhist quote, "Life is suffering." But when they actually translate it from the original Pali language, which is a conceptual language, the actual quote is, "Life is suffering because of our habitual responses to our subconscious belief." And so it's about breaking the habitual cycle, which is what I think you did. And what I think you do is you tap on it and you say, I'm doing something different. And you're literally breaking the habitual cycle of the subconscious belief. And I think I think it's brilliant. There's so many ways to come at this, but I think what you did was so simple and so easy that I think that it's a great system for people to try and incorporate into their life.
I'd say it's a simple process, but it probably wasn't always easy.
Right.
And you're talking about breaking those habits, but what we're really doing is creating new ones, right? We're breaking the neural pathways that are stuck in the negative and having these reactions, and we're using these techniques to develop a more peaceful being, which becomes our habit. It's like the yogis talk about, it's not just 20 minutes or 30 minutes or 60 minutes when you get on the mat and you're doing yoga. You become a yogi. You become centered. So this is how you move through your life, and not just once in a while throughout the day or the week. It's a new way of being.
Yeah. And I love that you, John, you used the word forgiveness, forgiving. You broke out that word. Also the word become, right? Becoming. Whatever we're being right now is coming to us in the future, right? So if we're working to release our reactions, right? That's if we're finding we're reacting, which is another word we could split up, we're redoing something that we have acted out before. If we change that reaction, if we tap when we're finding ourselves reacting, then that's changing our signal right in that moment. And the next time, we're not going to attract exactly the same thing. We're going to react slightly differently. And then we do it again next time. Then we change who we are and we change who we're becoming each time we do that.
Beautiful.
It is beautiful. It is beautiful.
Oh, lovely. So you have a book as well, right, Anne?
I do. I wrote down all the steps and every weird thing that happened along the way before I would forget it. Because our body does some weird things when it's letting go of really, really deeply held trauma that it's held for decades. So yes, I do. It's called The Pathway to Insight, and it's available on Amazon, or your local bookstore can order it for you.
That's lovely. And we're rounding up on a little over 30 minutes here. So so how do people find you, and what's the best way to find you?
I have a website, so you can contact me there at annhince.com. I also have a YouTube channel that has several videos about my path and the different parts of it, and some in more detail. It's also got an EFT demo on there as well, Tamara, and a Feeling Your Feelings demo, right? How I did that, how you can do that. And I also have a public Facebook page that I love writing things on right now, and I'm happy to interact with anyone there.
Nice.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that community back and forth is really the most important thing, is creating the interaction. I agree. Tamara, what are your thoughts on all this?
They're all good right now. I don't know what they are. I'm feeling really good. I'm feeling really happy. It's so wonderful to connect with the like-hearted, who have done the work and are sharing it, because we've all been through something. And those of us who have committed or devoted ourselves to our own inner work and then share it with the world, it makes it possible for others to see that it's possible to create real and lasting change for yourself, and to heal on deep, deep levels, so that you can, as I always say, create a life you truly love and believe that you're worthy of living it. So it's just so wonderful, the work you're doing and sharing, and we're so grateful.
Thank you. If we have a couple more minutes.
Yeah.
Can I share? Can I
Please,
share a little bit of the
please.
spiritual aspect that we
Please.
alluded to earlier? So what I think now is that I'm looking from the middle of my head, but I'm sensing through the connective tissue, right? I can tell exactly where I am in my body, but I can't tell what I'm in. I can't feel the difference between organs. I can feel the difference between bone and non-bone. But what I think it's our soul. I think our soul resides in our connective tissue. So that as we're releasing this tension in our connective tissue, we're actually making the soul more comfortable in the body. And I think when it's more comfortable in the body, I think it's likely to stay in the body longer. But I also think it's much more able to tune into spirit, which is what you were alluding to earlier. So I believe that when we're tight on the inside, we're not emitting a pure signal, so we can't tune in clearly. So this work, I do believe it's almost part of the enlightenment process. Right? There's two aspects to that in my mind. And you talked about one, we're actually releasing the burden that we've been carrying all these years. And so we actually feel lighter, like we feel physically lighter. But there's also, now I can sense on the inside, I recognize that as we release the tension, that is the darkness, and underneath it's actually light. I can sense the light underneath. So it's all part of the enlightenment process.
Right.
And yeah.
Oh, that's lovely. That's absolutely lovely. I think it's spectacular. And I think that right now there's so many people who are waking up. There's so many techniques and modalities that people are using to break free of their past, that I think that right now we're seeing a dramatic shift in people spiritually. I see it every day on my YouTube channel, John of New. And it's fascinating to get into conversations with people and see the very big difference between now and 15 years ago. Even it feels like there's an evolutionary shift in humanity right now, and I think it's a more spiritual shift. So it's very interesting. Well, this has been lovely. Thank you. Is there any parting words you want to throw at us, Ann?
I would love to say that I do believe that we can change our experience of the world right now, right? We're so divided, and that division is all based on our emotions, right? We're all emotional about the other side of whatever division we're considering at the moment, and we can work with those feelings. That's where our power is in the moment with our feelings. And if we let them go, I believe we can come together in peace.
Perfect message. Perfect.
Yeah, that's a beautiful message. Well, we want to thank you so much, Anne, for being here. And thank you to my co-host, the fabulous John Davis. I don't know why every time I say your name, I have to start trying to talk like you, John.
Well, yeah, it's addictive.
It's kind of fun. And we thank all of you listeners and viewers for being here with us. And, I think this episode has been a beautiful reminder of deepening awareness, deepen your own awareness. And that allows us to deepen the collective awareness, which, as Anne said, will, and I'm going to paraphrase, I'm going to put it in my own words, will initiate the change that we all really want to see in this world, which is toward coming together and being not of one mind, because it's our uniqueness that makes this life in this world so beautiful, but of compassionate minds, and where everyone can work and live beautifully together, because that's what it's all about, love. We love you, we're grateful, and we will talk to you again next week.
Thank you for joining us at Spirit Cafe, a place where you can safely explore your spirituality without the guilt or dogma of religion. Leave all comments and suggestions on the Spirit Cafe podcast Facebook page.